He didn't roar, he didn't sell shirts, he didn't lift the badge for the camera, but for 16 years, Gary Mabbutt was the one they turned to when everything else fell apart. He walked into Tottenham when it was still raw before the glamour, before the global pull, before the club learned how to dress pain in polish. And he stayed. Through eras, through chaos, through silence. He captained them through change, through brilliance, and never once asked to be praised. When doctors warned, diabetes will end your football, he didn't argue. He just trained harder and played longer. Longer than most who had no excuse. He just turned up, week after week, carried the armband like it meant something. And when the game moved on, when flash overtook fight, Spurs fans still remembered the man who never flinched. Gary Mabbutt. The man who made loyalty look effortless. The standard that never asked to be seen and never needed to. Subscribe if you remember this kind of loyalty. The game has changed, but men like Mabbutt still matter. He was born on 23rd August 1961, Bristol. Not built for banners, not raised in spotlight, just a boy in love with a game that didn't always love back. Gary Mabbutt wasn't a prodigy. He wasn't the golden name in every scout's notebook. But at 16, he made his debut for Bristol Rovers. No fanfare, no waiting period, just a teenager in a man's league, already showing signs he wouldn't flinch. And then, just as it began, they told him it might already be over. He was 17 when they gave him the news. Type 1 diabetes, a lifetime of injections, a body that would betray him if he didn't manage every bite, every sprint, every second. Most would have walked away, most were told to. But Mabbutt didn't walk. He ran harder. He tracked every drop of sugar like it was an opponent. He trained like failure wasn't a risk, it was a death sentence. And still, he played. And still, he grew. And in the summer of 1982, Tottenham Hotspur called. A club on the rise, a stage far brighter, a world that didn't wait for broken bodies. But Mabbutt didn't ask for time. He asked for a shirt. He walked into White Hart Lane with insulin in his pocket and fire in his chest. He didn't play like he had something to prove. He played like he had something to survive. And from that moment on, he never left. He didn't arrive to headlines, he arrived to work. Gary Mabbutt made his Spurs debut on 28th August 1982, just weeks after signing. No settling in, no excuses, just straight into the fight. And he never stepped out of it. Across 16 seasons, he became the only thing that didn't change while everything else around him did. Managers came and went. Lineker arrived. Gascoigne exploded. Klinsmann lit up the lane. But Mabbutt, he stayed. Through chaos, through rebuilds, through brilliance and breakdowns. He wore the armband with no need to lift it for show. He wasn't the loudest, he wasn't the flash, but he became the man everyone followed without needing to be told why. In 1987, the captain's armband was handed to him not for ceremony, but because there was no one else they trusted more. From that moment on, he didn't just play for Tottenham. He held Tottenham, week after week, season after season. From back four to dressing room, he was the spine that didn't bend. He wore number 6. He wore tape around his socks. He wore the pressure of a club that often stumbled, and he never let it show. 611 appearances, nearly 2 decades, and never once a scandal, never once a statement begging for credit. He didn't build a brand, he built a standard. And that's why, to the fans who lived through it all, Mabbutt wasn't just a captain. He was the reason the club kept standing when everything else around it nearly collapsed. Glory found Gary Mabbutt, but only after he gave everything to deserve it. In 1984, under Keith Birkinshaw, Tottenham marched through Europe. The UEFA Cup run wasn't easy. It was grit, ice, narrow escapes, penalty shootouts, and nerves in Vienna. But Mabbutt stood tall through every stage, not as a passenger, but as a pillar. He played in both legs of the final. And when Tony Parks made that iconic save in the shootout, it was Mabbutt who turned and roared not for himself, but for what it meant to them all. He had his first medal, but not his last. 7 years later, 1991. A Wembley final that had every reason to break them. Arsenal were favourites. Tottenham were walking wounded. Gascoigne was carried off on a stretcher, but Mabbutt led. He captained the side through that storm, lifting the FA Cup, his second major honour, not as a passenger, but as a man who carried the team on his back. He was the only player who had also lifted the UEFA Cup 7 years prior. Everyone else had come and gone, but he remained. In 1994, he was awarded an MBE for services to football. His 1996 testimonial at White Hart Lane drew legends and loyal fans alike. Even today, Mabbutt serves as an ambassador for Spurs, for FIFA, and for every child who thinks their illness disqualifies them from greatness. To them, he's still captain. But when the medals were handed out, Mabbutt's hands were always waiting taped up, calloused and earned. And true to Mabbutt's spirit, part of it went to diabetes research. Just a legend limping into the shadows. He didn't chase silverware, he outlasted the chaos until it came to him. By all logic, Gary Mabbutt's career should have been a brief one. Doctors told him early on, "You're diabetic. Football's not for you." He said, "Watch me." Every match, he injected insulin. Every day, he monitored blood sugar like his life depended on it, because it did. Yet he still sprinted, tackled, and led like the word restriction didn't exist in his dictionary. But that wasn't the worst. He even helped open the Tottenham Hale Kidney and Diabetes Center, standing proud where medicine met football, where struggle met hope. In 1993, an opponent's stray elbow shattered his skull. He needed a metal plate in his face. Surgeons said he'd be lucky to walk properly again, let alone head a football. Mabbutt returned within months. He didn't flinch from headers, didn't pull out of tackles, didn't ask for sympathy. He never gave fear permission to run his life. That wasn't the end of it. In 1996, an ankle injury left doctors suggesting retirement. He ignored them again. He rehabbed, trained, and fought back, because Mabbutt didn't know how to exit, only how to endure. He was inducted into Spurs Hall of Fame in March 2005. He became a symbol not just for Spurs fans, but for anyone fighting an invisible battle. Diabetes, pain, doubt. He carried it all quietly. No media shows, no self-pity presses, just another 90 minutes, another day defying what should have been the end. If greatness is measured by what a man survives, Gary Mabbutt stands taller than most. He didn't play despite adversity. He played through it and showed the world that toughness isn't loud. It's quiet, relentless, and refuses to break. Some wear the shirt, others become it. Gary Mabbutt didn't just play for Tottenham, he embodied it. From the moment he arrived in 1982, he brought not flair, not flash, but something rarer: steadfastness. He made Spurs feel safe. In a team known for artistry, Mabbutt was the spine. In a club chasing glory, he was the glue. He captained through triumph and turbulence. When stars came and left, he stayed. And not just stayed, he stood tall. Over 16 seasons, 611 appearances, one club, one cause, one code: loyalty. He didn't chase transfers. He didn't need the spotlight. He wasn't trying to be remembered, he was just trying to serve. And Tottenham noticed. Fans adored him, not for goals or flicks, but for being the kind of man you'd trust in a storm. Managers changed, chairmen changed. But when you looked at the back line and saw Mabbutt, you breathed easier. He wasn't just a centre-half, he was a standard. Kids looked up and thought, I want to be like Gary. Not rich, not famous, just worthy. Even long after he retired, his name still echoes through N17 like a hymn. Because you can't teach what Mabbutt gave them, you can only honor it. In the modern game of swaps and sellouts, he is a reminder. You don't need 10 clubs to have a great career, you just need one, and to love it with your life. No grand parade, no tearful interview, no headline farewell. Just Gary Mabbutt walking off the pitch for the last time, quietly, like a soldier returning from war. May 10th, 1998, Tottenham vs Southampton. The last of his 611 appearances. A 6-2 win. But the score didn't matter. What mattered was who was leaving. After 16 years of tackles, blocks, and bandaged jaws, after lifting the FA Cup and facing down diabetes, Mabbutt was leaving the one place he truly belonged. He didn't ask for the spotlight, but the crowd gave it anyway. They stood, They sang, they saluted, because they knew you don't replace a man like Mabbutt. Players like him don't fade, they engrave. Into memory, into history, into the soul of a club. And when he took that final walk down the tunnel, Tottenham didn't just lose a defender, they lost an anchor, a moral compass. A quiet hero who never stopped showing up. Not for money, not for glory, but for the love of the badge. You'd think after 20 years of football, Gary Mabbutt would disappear into comfort, a villa, a quiet life. But he never stopped fighting, because his mission was never just about football. After retirement, Mabbutt became an ambassador for Tottenham, for diabetes awareness, for disabled athletes, for integrity in sport. He visited schools. He stood beside hospital beds. He mentored the England squad from the wings. And when the 2010 World Cup came to South Africa, the Prince of Wales sent him to represent the nation. He refused to be remembered only as a footballer. He wanted to be remembered as a man who served others. And all this while still managing his diabetes, including enduring multiple eye surgeries and partial loss of vision in one eye. But when asked if he felt unlucky, he never complained. He just smiled and said, "I've had a wonderful life. I've played the game I love. And if I can help others do the same, that's enough." He didn't just walk away from football, he carried it forward, quietly, consistently, completely. The way he always had. He doesn't have a statue, he didn't chase the spotlight. And maybe you won't hear his name shouted on street corners. But at White Hart Lane, and in the hearts of those who know what leadership really means, Gary Mabbutt is a giant. A leader who outthought pain. A player who gave everything, every game. A man who turned personal struggle into public inspiration. He's proof that greatness isn't always loud. That sometimes, the most powerful legacy comes not from the flash of brilliance, but from the quiet courage of showing up, even when it hurts. Ask any Spurs fan old enough to remember. They won't talk about stats. They'll talk about his heart. And when he finally stepped away from the game after more than 600 senior matches, with a rebuilt face and a blood-soaked armband in his past, he didn't cry. He just said, "I've done what I came here to do." He's more than a captain, more than a survivor, more than a man who played with metal in his face and fire in his chest. In 2016, Tottenham fans voted Gary Mabbutt into their all-time 11. Not for just being captain, but for being the kind of man you build a club around. Steady, brave, and never chasing headlines. Club legends still speak his name with reverence. And to this day, supporters chant it with pride. Gary Mabbutt wasn't just a player. He was Tottenham's anchor through storms, and the Premier League's quiet warrior. Subscribe for more tributes to legends who led not with words, but with iron hearts.